What is up, everyone, and welcome to another Bitcoin market update. In these videos, you will learn how to use technical analysis to forecast price movements in your favorite cryptocurrencies. All right, let's dive into it here with Bitcoin on the weekly time frame. So, starting off with the recent price action that we're seeing this week, we can see that this candle has already broken above the previous weekly candle's high, which I said once we closed this weekly candle, if we closed it with a shorter upper wick, which is what we did, it would be likely that the next week we would see further follow through from the bulls, and that is what we have seen so far. But the other thing that I said is it's also likely that this candle will end up forming somewhat of our top here on this run up in price. We'll form a top, and then on the next subsequent couple weeks, we'll potentially see that drawdown thereafter to come down and form a higher low somewhere above the low from July 19th. So right now it's looking very good for the bulls for continuation. What I'll be interested to see is if the bulls can come down, form a higher low, and then come up and form a higher high. This was kind of this was that kind of pattern, but the way that I read candlesticks, it's not following my specific kind of structure. So what I'm usually looking for is when the price is coming down here, you can see that this bottom of this candle, here I'll zoom in here so it's easier to see. So when we're looking at this drawdown in price, the reason why I don't consider this a trend change is because this candle right here kind of throws it off because it breaks the low and the high of the previous candle and closes above that key high. So when we're coming down here, if we would have set a low here, did not have this lower wick, and then came up and got this follow through for a higher high, then I would have said it's a trend change. But because of this lower wick, when I read this, I'm reading it high, low, lower high, lower low, higher high, which is obviously not the pattern that we're looking for continuation, but that might just be the way that I read price action. Maybe other people are anticipating this is a trend change. If they are, then this candlestick right here will end up being strong support for price if we return to that level. So that'll be something I'll be watching in the coming months. Let's go down to the lower time frames now. All right, so looking at this from a 3-day perspective, you can see that this candle closes in 35 minutes. And if we're looking at the volume right now, it looks good for potential continuation here with increasing bull volume. So we'll see how this candle ends up closing. But if we close with a doji candle here in the 3-day, I would expect to see a drawdown thereafter in the subsequent 3 days following this close. So that'll be something that I'm keeping an eye on, is this close in 35 minutes. If we do end up getting a close that's with a short upper wick, meaning we push up from where we are now, because right now it's looking more like more bearish than bullish, then we could see continuation into this gray and then red zones, these gray and red zones here, which will be our main resistance zones. So the reason why the gray zone is resistance is because we had this bull trend back here on the 3-day time frame where we have a low, high, higher low, and then higher high pattern with 2 candle closes above the key high. So this last down candle where there was sell volume, so if we look at this, if we look down, we can see that this had sell volume, this last area on this 3-day time frame where people were selling their Bitcoin before this rise in price that changed the trend. So once we change the trend and we return to this level, this acted as support here and then here again. And then once we closed below it, now when we return to it, it should act as resistance for price, at least on the first test. So that's something that I am watching. Daily time frame, a couple things I'm watching here. One is this red resistance level here, which is a resistance zone back here from May 14th. And this is where we had our bear trend right here. very simple. Whenever we're looking for support and resistance, we're looking for the trend. So right here we have a high, low, lower high, and then lower low. And so this last candle where people were buying their Bitcoin is going to be the area where I will potentially look for a rejection on the first test. If we get into that zone, especially on the first test of this gray zone, if we get all the way to the red zone, I feel like that is going to be pretty strong resistance for price. Something else that I'm looking at right now is this trend right here that's emerging, potentially. So we have a low here, high right here with this black candle, higher low, and then higher high. So now the question is this candle, we already got one candle close above the key high here. Is this candle now going to close above this key high, or is it going to close below it? So if it closes above it, this will end up turning into a support zone for price, this black candlestick from August 8th. Now there's two scenarios that could play out there with the black candlestick. The first of which is the scenario where we bounce off of that level. So if we look at this from, if I could find, yes, my brush tool. So if we do get a candle close above this today, let's say we come back into this tomorrow, then we could get a bounce into potentially this red zone here. The other scenario is we do close above this again today, but then instead of bouncing off of this level, we go right through this level and close two candlesticks below it, then come back into it, and then potentially see a rejection from that level. So I'm really watching this daily candle close today in 31 minutes to see not only that 3-day level, to see where the 3-day candle rather, to see where that candle closes, but also to see where this single day candle closes, to see if we turn this into a level that I will be keeping an eye on. Last thing I wanted to say on the daily time frame was this Ichimoku cloud edge-to-edge trade, which we talked about in yesterday's video. So if you haven't already, check out that video from yesterday where I talk about this a bit more in depth, but today we're just going to briefly overview it. So you can see that this edge-to-edge trade from this edge of the cloud where you go long and then take that long all the way to the other edge of the cloud has been playing out very nicely here. We've almost reached the complete target here, but sometimes you don't reach the entire thing. You get pretty close and then you reject. So we'll see, like I said, where today's daily candle closes and if we get a move into this going into the next few days. All right, lower time frames. So if we look at this from an 8-hour perspective. So from an 8-hour perspective, there's a couple things that I'm keeping an eye on. One is this purple level right here, which we got close to touching right here, but didn't actually hit. So this is a support zone from when we had our bull trend here, a low, high, higher low, and then higher high with two candle closes above the key high. So this is a zone that I'm keeping an eye on if we do end up coming into this in the coming hours and days. The other zone that I'm keeping an eye on is the 12-hour zone over here, which is from May 16th. So this is where we have our, this is where we had our bear trend here with a high, low, lower high, and then lower low. And this is the first test of this level. You can see we've already rejected off of this level once. This was the level I've been talking about over the past at least few days. So we've had a rejection off that level, but the other thing to keep in mind is this gray zone in here. So this gray zone is actually the zone that you want to keep an eye on as well, because this zone is where we had our bear trend here. Same thing, high, low, lower high, lower low. And we had a rejection here and here. And then we closed above this, two candle closes above this zone. So now the gray zone may act as support for a push, one more push maybe higher into this yellow gray zone here. If we look at this from a super guppy perspective, you can see that we have flipped the trend back to being in the bull's favor after being bearish since roughly May, mid-May, like May 10th. And you can see that this we bounced off of these longer term EMAs here, the green EMAs, and now we're operating far above those green EMAs. So sometimes when you see this, it means that we're a bit overbought, meaning that there's so many buyers in the market that they have pushed the price above where it would be reasonable potentially for the price to be. And that is where these kind of longer term EMAs are. So there's so many buyers and not many sellers is basically what that's saying. And so if we return to these green EMAs at some point in the coming days, I'll expect probably at least one bounce there on this 12-hour time frame before we potentially go lower if we do. You can see on the daily time frame we're getting ready to flip this to being bullish once again. But so far we have not actually done that. I'd say a few more days, and I think this will officially, these EMAs down here, the gray ones, will turn green. So this is what they look like when they turn green. So you can see when they turn green and they're expanded like this, they act as strong support for price. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. And if it does, I would expect a bounce from those levels on a retest at some point in the future, at least once. So that is all I got for this video, guys. If you like this video, give it a like down below and subscribe for future educational content around cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. We'll be putting out a tutorial this week as well. So leave a comment in the comments down below for what you would like that tutorial to be about. Would you like me to discuss things like DeFi applications, staking, or really anything else? I'd be happy to cover that for you guys. So leave that in the comment section down below. And in addition to that, if you haven't already, check out our beginner technical analysis course that we released on Leutheria.com. This is where you can learn all the foundational elements of technical analysis to get started trading these crypto assets with precision and accuracy. So you'll learn everything from candlestick analysis to volume analysis to trend analysis to the bulls and the bears to support and resistance and other stuff as well. So check that out. There's a link for that in the description below where you can get 20% off your course. And until tomorrow, onward and upward.